Welcome. Glad that you came back. Again, we're looking at another session where we're going to look at and reflect together on what it means to choose the path of kindness. Um, but let me first ask you a question. This question might sound a little strange, but we'll get to the point later when you figure out why I'm asking it. Have you ever been called stupid or fat or lazy or worse, a fool? There are a lot of hurtful words in our vocabulary, and when these words are unleashed at us like a dagger, they can do irreparable damage to our self-esteem. And you probably already know that if it's happened to you. I decided to look up the word fool in Webster's dictionary, and it says a fool is someone who is lacking in judgment or prudence. Yet, what's interesting is that St. Paul says in his letter to the Corinthians, 1 Corinthians chapter 4, he says, we are fools for Christ's sake. Now, is St. Paul being offensive here? What is he trying to tell us? You notice, of course, that he doesn't stop after those words, we are fools, but he continues by saying, we are fools for Christ's sake. So what started out as pretty demoralizing and demeaning maybe becomes a little bit one of the highest of compliments. We are people capable of believing that Christ died and rose and is victorious. And if and when we are insulted for our beliefs, we don't throw back an insult. Instead, we give a blessing. I know a priest once who told me that he was in a traffic jam with a couple of other cars, and one woman in another car gave him the finger. Well, he returned the compliment by giving her a gesture as well. But he gave her a gesture which was a blessing. I bet she was pretty surprised, first of all, that she realized later that she gave the finger to a priest, and then that in return, he gives her a blessing. I would imagine that that person was quite surprised, but we also maybe are surprised when we hear that St. Paul calls us fools for Christ's sake. When he says that, he does not mean to degrade or malign or insult us. Instead, he turns the tables on our tapestry of logical thinking. Nothing is really logical when it comes to being a follower of Christ. We might as well come to grips with that if we haven't already. Being a follower of Christ demands a change of life so radical that many may look upon us as fools. But we shouldn't care, because the victory is ours in the end. God loves us. Even if we are sometimes strangely forgetful of God, or even if our heart seems to be more attached to many things maybe than attached to God, the God of our heart and our portion is one that is with us forever. He's the one who is faithful, the one who's good to us, the one who's close to us. God is our light. So the question I'd be asking myself today, and maybe you could reflect on it yourself, are we willing to be a fool or to be made a fool for Christ's sake? Am I willing to risk ridicule and failure in order to announce Jesus Christ? Sometimes I do think, and maybe you think too, that the world has gone mad. And the gospel quote is, quote, out of season. End of quote. More than ever, the Lord needs a few fools to risk ridicule and hatred in order to proclaim his gospel to a hostile world that often thinks it is a pretty foolish doctrine, the Christianity is, that it is hopelessly out of touch. But as fools for Christ's sake, we don't believe that. So, if this week someone calls you a fool, pray that you will increasingly live a life worthy of that title. Have a good week.